it's time for our Platinum sponsor, Accenture Greece. Accenture is a global professional services company with leading capabilities in digital, cloud, and security. Combining unmatched experience and specialized skills across more than 40 industries, they offer strategy and consulting, technology and operation services, all powered by the world's largest network of advanced technology and intelligent operation centers. Dr. Jiorgis Kritsotakis is coming on the stage. Dr. Jiorgis Kritsotakis is a managing director with Accenture Greece and leads Accenture's energy and resources practice. Mr. Kritsotakis will be talking about Metaverse Waves, getting real in a virtual world.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for being here.
Applause. No. This is... Let me start with a small story. Because of the applause, I got the idea of sharing this with you. Many years ago, I was in a musical, sort of very similar setting to the one that we have today in Germany, with close friends, and we were about to hear Piano Concerto No. 1 from Beethoven. So the conductor comes out, the soloist, comes out, and I'm about to clap. And there was this German friend of mine who sat next to me, much older than I was at the time. And the moment I was about to connect my hands, he just puts them down and says, oh, no. So I look at him and say, why not? He says, you haven't heard him play. Why are you clapping before you actually get to hear the final result? So, in a way, let's wait for what we have to share and then see whether we're worth the clapping or not. But in any case, I'm extremely thankful for the invitation to be here with you. I treat this as a great privilege for myself as well as for Accenture. And I would like to thank the organizers for extending this invitation to all of us. Secondly, I wanted to say how excited I am for being here. And I'm not saying this or sharing this in kind of quote-unquote Americanized way where everything is exciting. I'm saying this for three reasons. Firstly, because I think the topic that we will cover is quite exciting. Secondly, because this is the first conference that I'm rejoining with a physical presence. And okay, digitalization helped us sort of break down many barriers, but at the same time, I felt that it took away quite a bit of the interaction that we can have in similar settings. So that gets me excited, the fact that I'm here and you're here and I can actually see you in a physical context. The third reason is a little bit more personal, which I'll take 30 seconds from the time that we have available and I'm checking now, so in case I miss any more. And it has to do with the venue. It has to do with the place of where we are today. Why am I saying this? Apart from Megaron being such a jewel for the city of Athens, many of you may not know that almost 10 years ago, it almost went bust, and it was about to close. So at that time, I had the privilege with my team and Accenture to step in and create the transformation plan so that the Megaron can actually live to be here with us today and us to be with it and have this session. So it's a very special venue, it's a very special place for me, and I feel particularly happy for being here. I think I spent too much time on the introductions. I have a nice slide behind me with a surfer on the way of going up, and this is precisely how I kind of see the metaverse now. It's a very difficult term, it's a philosophical concept that we are all trying to understand, and what I would like to do with you today is try to shed some light from our perspective and hopefully get some conversations going on the corridors and most definitely during the session. So what I want us to do before we actually deep dive into the notion of the metaverse is to take a step back and try to understand what is the world that we live in. Because a lot of the things that we do, how we live, how we work, how we collaborate, we take them for granted. By taking a step back, I think it will help us understand a bit the society and the economy within which we operate. So I've tried to put this notion of the step behind into 6 trends, which I don't think they're trends. This is the reality of how we live and work. And very quickly, I'll just browse through them just to get a feel about where we are today. Starting with the first one, not a traditional thing, not a problem. What do we mean by this? We mean total disruption of industries. I'm reminding everybody who is of a certain age and above, luckily most of the audience is quite young, so they wouldn't have a vivid recollection of what I would say. How was it some years ago when for your telecom services you had to go to your telecom provider, For your entertainment services, you had to go to whoever was the over-the-top, the channel that was available free to air at the time. Look at the world that we live today. Look at how startups that have now become massive companies have replaced entire industries, number one. Number two, the instant everything. And I could have put next to the everything the word gratification, which pretty much describes how we operate as consumers and as citizens, I would almost dare to say. In the sense that we expect to have what we want now. And for that to happen, there's a lot of machinery that needs to take place behind it, and we will touch upon it as the presentation and the discussion unfolds. Number three, the experience economy. We are no longer happy just by seeing products that they look homogeneous to us. They become commodities before our eyes and in the way that we want to use them. We are now looking for something that would give us a seamless experience, very different to what we had in the past. And we take it as a given, which I think is the important element to underline here. Number four, what we call lightweight living. If I wanted to be a little bit more daring, I would almost say the as-a-service society that we are part of. In more advanced sort of Western economies and societies, you will already see that the sharing economy, which is another way of describing this trend, is pretty much taking root across the board in terms of what we do. With houses, with cars, it started off with software, and now it sort of permeates our daily lives. Number five, the everyday magic. We are no longer content with just the use of the product or the service that we have in our hands. We want to be positively surprised. We want our products and our services to learn from how we live and what we do and surprise us nonstop. This is ongoing, and this is quite pervasive, I think, in the way that we operate. By the way, the logos are just some ideas of companies that I would kind of fit in the categories. The most interesting for me, the last one, is the unplugged and the plugged in. What this means is that the services and the products we want to consume, we want to make sure that they take away the noise from our everyday life. And you know what they almost say about technology? Technology works well when it's hidden, when I don't understand it. I will challenge each and every one of you to remember how it was 10 years ago when you switched handsets, phone handsets, mobile phone handsets. Oh my God. How will I carry my contacts? Do I need to copy them on the SIM? How many contacts would the SIM fit? And what about all the rest that I may have on the phone? And how would this be transferred? Then is it on the cloud? And is the cloud available for everybody? And then all of a sudden, you go buy yourself a new phone, and the moment you switch it on and you put it next to your old one, it says, whoops, there's a new phone. Would you like me to transfer your data? Yes. Continue. Yes. Calculating. 3, 4, 5 minutes tops. 20, if you have too many, I don't know, you don't have them on the cloud, click. You leave the phones one by side to the other. You go get a cup of coffee, you come back, you pick up your new phone, and hopefully if it's an eSIM phone, you don't even have to replace the SIM, the damn SIM. It's done. That's magic. That's unplugged. That's noise being removed. That's instant gratification. That is the world we live in now. And it's important to understand the context of this if we are to even begin thinking about what the metaverse is, does, or could become. So how did this all happen? Which is an important question that keeps on sort of bumping against my head. When you look at this beautiful slide, and I say beautiful because of the movement, there's some poetry, some lyricism, given where we are today. There are many different readings that you can do on this slide. I'll handpick 3 just very quickly to understand why I put it up there. Firstly, you can see the gradual evolution of technologies. So this is a reminder to everybody that we came from some place and we're moving to another, and these are the steps that we're taking along the way. The second thing that you would observe is how many of the technologies become a prerequisite for the technology that follows. So one feeds into the other. And as in academia they say, and I'm looking at Professor Kritsotakis, and thank you for a beautiful presentation, that at least I learned a lot of things, and by coincidence I'm also part of the energy resources sort of market, so I had plenty to follow. One technology stands on the shoulders of the other, right? And the third, and most important from my perspective at least, and in the context of our discussion, is this sort of ecliptical part on the top, which is what we call the combinatorial effect. So how now technologies, not only one precedes the other, but one lives within the other and becomes the steroid that multiplies what we get. So the reason why I wanted to take this sort of 4 or 5 minutes at the beginning of our discussion and show you the world that we live in and what has made it happen, what has enabled it, is the role of technology and the combinatorial effect of technology today. Technology has always been something that changes economies, changes societies, how we operate, how we live. But what we experience these days, I think, is far more pervasive and far faster than any other time in the world, at least that we know of. So it comes as no surprise that when we go and we talk with the executives and we ask them, what are the fundamental things that you take into account when you want to design or revamp your long-term strategy? And they give us this stunning 98%. For us, it's technology now. We never had this in the past. In the past, it was more about, societal trends. It was about political developments. It was about macro sort of forces, macroeconomic forces. They're still in play, don't get me wrong. And they still influence quite a bit of the definition of the strategy. But the fact that technology, from being one element, becomes a dominant element in the analysis, kind of communicates the significance that this takes. And then when you take it one step further and you ask yourself, right, okay, so what about the metaverse? Everybody talks about this damn word, the metaverse. What is the metaverse? Do you think is important? And what would the metaverse do? Then you start seeing optimism, and you see I would say a number which is quite high, 71% thinking that it would have some sort of an impact and a positive impact on their organizations, but that's below the 98 that we had for technology in general. And then when you ask them the extent to which this could be breakthrough or transformational, it further collapses down to the 42%, which is still an important number. So what does this tell us as a picture? It tells us that we understand technology to be important. We understand that metaverse is here and would definitely somehow impact our organizations. I don't really know to what extent the impact that metaverse would have would be so profound that it would make me change what I do. Half of them, right? So that begs the question that we need to answer. What is the metaverse? If you think that I'm going to give you an answer working out of the session, think again. I can give you a direction and some thoughts around it, but I'm not sure that I can give an answer, because I think the metaverse as we see it now is more like a set of waves that is coming in, and we're just trying to make sense of what this is and also, drop our board and jump on it so we can surf. We treat it as being something quite new. I wanted to add this picture simply because for those that don't know, just to remind them that it's not that new. The term was coined back in 1992. That was the year I remember that I was, entering university. So, I'm very close. I'm 49. So 50, 49. I don't know what this says about the age of the presenters here, but thank God you guys bring the average down. So it came out of a novel written by Stevenson, which had to do with someone that was moving from the virtual to the real, back and forth. Pretty much what we discussed the metaverse to be today. And having said this, one important aspect that I think if there was one slide that I wanted you to take with you at the end of our session, it would probably be the slide that I have behind me. An easier way to approach what the metaverse is, or what the metaverse does, or will do, or we hope that it will, is to put it in a continuum and understand it as the evolution of our internet. So again, I'm going to ask you to take a trip down to memory lane and go back in the early 90s, for those of us that are old enough to remember, those of you that are young enough to have been told. When the internet came out, it was pretty much about static pages, static information that was aggregated someplace to which we could have access, and that helped us a lot because as a human, we would interfere with a machine and get information that otherwise would have been very difficult to aggregate. That's how it started. Then when we go back to the 2000s, then all of a sudden, a more social dimension emerges. And under this web of social dimension that I'm describing, we started seeing the apps coming through, the Facebooks and the likes, that most of those are now sort of littering our screens on our phones. And this is when the internet became about the communication between people. So this is how we get connected. This is how we get hooked up. This is how we exchange information about ourselves and what we do, and what we like and what we hate. So then the internet became the platform that connected people. Then the next incarnation of that came closer to what we have come to know and what we have come to refer to as the IoT, the Internet of Things, where the internet was about connecting things, connecting machines that initially began to speak to each other, and then hopefully as time progresses, the human dimension gets incorporated into that discussion. So there's the communication between machines and then a human somewhere in the middle. And if you think that this is something that is far-fetched, you can just look around you. You can just, if you're driving a Tesla, you'll feel it immediately when you drive it. If you're buying a new fridge, you would see it in the new fridge. If you have bought a new air conditioning, you would see it through how the Wi-Fi and you connect you, and before you go home, you tell your air conditioning to actually cool your place down because it's summer and it's warm, right? And this is only the beginning. We're going to see more and more of this human-machine interaction coming out. And this is where the third incarnation of the internet came from. Now, the fourth one, which is where we stand today, is what we would like to refer to as the internet of place. And this is where the metaverse starts to come up, at least in our own definition, in our own understanding of how it works. And the metaverse of place is the notion of how you connect people and places in a virtual and real world without necessarily knowing where you are at each time, or even if you know, being able to change from one to the other. So this is where we are today. And if there was a more simplified sort of two-liner that one can take with him or with her at the end of this session, it would be, the metaverse is intended, and I underline the intended because we don't really know what it would become. It's ongoing, it's happening now, it's dynamic. So if something is happening, you can't really define it. We can only describe it and try to frame it. So it is intended to work as a bridge between physical and digital entities, creating a sense of belonging. As I said in my introduction, we're talking technology, but in a very philosophical sort of way, because this is where the metaverse lives right now. Now, how do we make it happen? For me, the slide that you see behind me is in many ways a depiction also of what we call in Accenture our core purpose. Our core purpose in Accenture is to bridge and unite technology with human ingenuity. So in many ways, this slide is a depiction of precisely the purpose that we're describing. So on the one hand, what you have is a technology on the top layer and the different elements. Of course, this is a non-exhaustive slide because technologies, I would need a deck of 50 slides just to list them. But just to get an idea, we're talking about the VRs, we're talking about the XRs, we're talking about all the different component parts, of course, the cloud that is behind it, blockchain that also supports it. These are the technologies that make it happen, and the virtual platforms that are now being used for the meta of the different companies. The second one, though, is us. The second one is us in terms of us being humans. So it's the creativity that we bring. It's the imagination that we bring. It's the way in which we start imagining and designing and depicting the places that metaverse would be about. This is how we shape it and frame it. And below is, of course, about the human and social norms, meaning what is acceptable and what is not acceptable. What are the notions of identity that we would like to have? What is the freedom of expression that we will allow? And most importantly, just to tie it with the introduction, and I think with a lot of the sessions that will follow, the notion of trust and security, which is absolutely essential for metaverse. Right? So for me, the definition is the bridge that I showed you before, and the elements that I would put would be the technologies that make it happen, the humans that design it and populate it, and of course, the social norms via which we want to use it and build it. Why do people use the metaverse now? If you can see to the left, I think it's the left, yes, my right, part of the slide, you would see some random numbers here. I would urge you to pay attention to the numbers that I show you. I'll tell you at the end why. It's more about a social thing when you look at it. 42% getting together with friends. 39%, so this is sort of social media type of stuff. 39% attending a contest or a show of an artist or playing a game. Yeah, this is more around the entertainment space. Same thing goes for watching films, hosting events. So currently, it's predominantly about the social dimension. Of course, we have examples, and I'll mention a few, of how we have industrial applications of it and how these industrial applications are actually getting airborne. But this could mean a gazillion opportunities for all of us that I've just listed a few areas where one can begin imagining what they could do with the metaverse. In this crowd where we are today, we could be anything. We could be students, we could be startuppers, we could be owners of smaller or bigger companies, we could be executives of companies, we could be workers of companies. There's opportunity for everybody depending on how they would like to approach it. And I list those simply because I know you're going to get the slides at the end of this session, and this may act for you as a means of inspiration. For me, continuing with the numbers, I don't want to spend too much time on mentioning, the 2.5 billion that socialize with the messages they exchange on Roblox. This is just to paint the picture. But I want to spend some time, at least take a step and think about it. If it currently is 180 billion, and we believe that 2 years from now, it'll become 800 billion. And then in the small print, which is not so small on a screen like this, the global metaverse revenue expected by 2030 is a 13 trillion economy. Let me repeat this. 13 trillion economy. One can kind of understand that this is no longer a fad. If investors seeing that the revenues that are expected to be generated would reach that scale, which is exponential compared to where we are today and where we're going to go. That means that that's something that we need to look at. Would it influence what we do? My bet is everything. It would influence the way we design and offer the customer experience. We have names, many names, Nike Land, Gucci Gardens, the Balenciaga space. I'm just mentioning, name dropping some well-known brands and the metaverse that they have designed. I don't know if you have accessed them yourselves, but you can go in and you can do many things, many interesting things. You can go in and browse. You can go in with your avatar and buy stuff, actual physical stuff. So you buy it in the metaverse, but you get it in your doorstep as a physical component. You can buy tokens. You can buy NFTs. You can buy digital products. They don't exist physically. And as a matter of fact, maybe you have heard it, maybe you haven't, but it's one of the most sort of striking examples. In Gucci Garden, there was a Gucci bag that was sold for an avatar at a price, digital bag, meaning it doesn't exist, it's a picture. You get my point, right? A picture, which was sold at a price higher than the actual physical bag that you would buy in a store, simply because your avatar could have that one, if that tells you anything. Okay? This is one of the most celebrated stories that, of course, percolates around the internet. Think about opportunities when you're going to buy a physical pair of shoes, Nikes, in a store, and then they'll tell you, this is $150. But it could be $165 if you also want to get the NFT so you can put it on your avatar. So you make money out of nothing. Hot air. Speaking of customer experience, the products you make, I just sort of touched upon it. Payments, because don't forget, part of what fuels the metaverse is also the blockchain that runs behind it, and of course the cryptocurrencies that we would have, and any kind of digital payment and the way that it would take place. How you make your products and the supply chains. Maybe you've noticed in the previous slide that 31 of the factories that BMW currently has globally have a digital twin. By having a digital twin of your shop floor, that means that you can change your processes somewhere else, safely, on the metaverse, see how they work, and if they work, you bring them back on the shop floor. Imagine what this could do. You could have an actual view of how your factory works at any given second without being physically there. You can train your people in jobs that entail a great amount of danger by just putting your Oculus or any other kind of device safely. So there's many stuff that we do. Now, at Accenture, because we take it quite seriously, and we believe that there is an opportunity here, we began to implement it upon ourselves. We began to use it ourselves. We began to populate it ourselves. So we never really want to go to our clients without having tried something on ourselves to see if it works. Otherwise, we don't really make a convincing statement about why they should do it. So what we've done already is 150,000 of our onboarded personnel. We're currently, I think, 750,000 people, 800,000 people, somewhere there. I think we're the 4th biggest employer in the world currently. So of the last 150K people that we hired, we've onboarded them in the metaverse. So they came in, they got their bag, they got their laptop, they got their T-shirts, they got their sweatshirts, they got their pens, and then they got an Oculus set as well. They say, go home. Don't forget, we're talking about pandemic years, yeah? But we continue to do this. Go home, put your Oculus on, and I'll meet you there. I'll meet you there. Where? The nth floor. What is the nth floor? The nth floor is a space that we have created where employees that work in San Francisco, in Manila, in Athens, get together there with their avatars and get in real conversations. But of course, this is not real, this is virtual. Yes, but the people are real, the new hires. Just figure it out. And it happens now, as I'm talking. And at the same time, I think we're copying BMW here, not because we want to change how the shop floor works, but because we believe there's value in doing this. We're now building digital twins of our offices. So we could easily set up a meeting and say, I'll meet you on the 3rd floor in our office, in room 321. But hey, you get into the room from your Oculus. You don't really go there yourself. Is it a good thing or a bad thing? I don't want to put any judgment because I told you at the beginning I'm kind of biased about the physical interaction more than the digital itself. But the coexistence of the two and the notion of the place that I mentioned is quite important. So, cognizant of the time, let us not forget that technology is what we do with it. And an element that often audiences like ours and people like us tend to forget is our important notions of how we put the technology in play. So what I wanted to leave you with before we wrap up is that the notions of, I'm handpicking the elements which I think are quite important, the notions of privacy, safety, and identity are critical for Metaverse to take off. Right now, the Metaverse, first of all, there is not one Metaverse. Every company builds its own. So we have a fragmentation of metaverses, if I can call it like that. So how could I travel from one to the other? Would I need a single sign-on? Where will be my credentials be kept? If I want to go to my bank in the metaverse and then exit my bank and go visit another store to buy something, how would I be able to do this? Do I need to have a different avatar for each of the metaverses that I visit? Or is it going to be the same with a single sign-on? And to what extent will I be able to actually secure this? So these are all questions that are now getting ready to be answered. I'd like to thank you for paying attention.